Hello, everybody. It's me, Fee Timms, the White Zulu, or Fiki. Sorry I haven't been around much, but had a tooth issue and had to take 10-day course of antibiotics, which nearly killed me. But I'm back. I'm going to see the dentist tomorrow, and if I sound a bit spitty or lispy, it's the tooth, not me. I'm not drunk, I promise, not at this time of the day. So, we carry on in Switzerland with another bit of mischief. And this piece is called Shoplifting and Subterfuge. At the end of February, I received a telegram from Dad. You passed your matric, it said, succinctly. You got a D, but it is a university pass. I was flabbergasted. This couldn't be possible. I distinctly remembered writing the barest minimum on my history exam paper, nothing much more than my name, the date, and the government matric exam number I'd been allocated. I'd put my pen down after 15 minutes and then gazed out of the window, dreaming about the school leavers dance due in a couple of weeks' time, while my classmates wrote furiously and groaned after 3 hours was up and time was called to put their pens down, as they hadn't finished yet. I hadn't put much more effort into my other 5 required subjects, as I was so bored with the whole matric thing that I wanted to get it over and done with as soon as I could. There had to be some mistake. The markers must have mixed my papers up with some other unfortunate soul. That could be the only explanation. Anyway, I didn't care either way. School was just a distant, miserable memory to me now, and the only future that concerned me was to get my gold medal for skiing, and even more importantly, a boyfriend. Those were my immediate priorities. I scribbled a postcard to my parents saying how pleased I was and tossed it into a postbox in the village on my way to the cable car. We quickly achieved our silver medals from the Swiss ski school and started preparing for the gold. Apparently, once you had gold medal status, you could apply to train as a ski instructor. So we put all our efforts into more difficult and faster skiing, hurling ourselves down the black pistes after the divine Roger le Noir, doing high jumps off les bosses, the moguls, or big mounds left by skiers as they turn. A mad Kiwi boy in our class of 8, showing off, saw a potentially perfect ramp on one slope and shot down it at top speed, launching himself high into the air, soaring like an Olympic ski jumper before he landed on the other side with a loud splash into a deep, steaming pool of fresh cow dung. Ever since the Swiss had domesticated cattle, they've lived on the mountainsides in chalets. In winter, they keep their cattle in a byre beneath their living quarters, with only wooden floors separating the 3 stories. The warmth rising from the cows and their manure helps keep the family living just above nice and cozy, reducing the need to burn so much fuel. And above their living quarters, they have a platform filled to the roof with hay, cut from the long fresh grass during the short summer months as insulation. A perfect system, and the only drawback would be the strong odour of fresh manure which the inhabitants might find comforting, or probably don't even notice. All through the long winter months, farmers live up there with their cattle, using the ski lifts to nip down to the village and back to sell their fresh, creamy milk and cheese, or to buy essential provisions. Often they ski down, and when I was there, could easily be distinguished from the colourfully dressed tourists, as they wore denim dungarees, tweed jackets, and were muffled up with hand-knitted scarves, usually in a serviceable brown, and bobble hats made from scraps of wool. They had old-fashioned, long and very narrow skis with leather bindings. Monsieur Henchoz had told me all this history because he'd been called out to attend to various beasts during his veterinary practice days, and that in the very old days, everybody had used barrel staves strapped to their boots with strips of leather as skis. It was he who had so vividly described to me how les paysans, the peasants, lived so happily with their cattle, and would only turn them out to graze once the snow had melted. A few feet below the cow byre, one particular farmer had, as they all did, mucked out his cows daily with gravity-fed melted snow, and the result was a large, deep pond of steaming liquid manure. Our Kiwi friend landed right in the middle of it and disappeared for a moment before he reappeared spitting and gasping while we rolled about howling with laughter. Dejectedly, he had to grope around in the gooey filth to retrieve both his skis, which had come off on landing, and, abandoning his woolly hat and mittens, crawled out to try and clean himself up by rolling in the snow to freeze the worst of it solid so that it could be picked off in lumps. It was no good. To the echoes of our mocking laughter, he had to ski all the way down to the village. No way was he going to be allowed into the cable car with fastidious tourists in the state he was in, trudge home and have a full bath and complete change of clothes. The Henchoz son, Pierre, was deeply in love with Brita. Even before I'd left school to come over to Switzerland, I'd heard so much about him from my cousin Sandra, who'd pioneered the Henchoz family arrangement and had spent a very happy 3 months with them, coming home with fluent French and medals for skiing. When I pressed her for details, as it was where I was about to spend 4 months, all she could talk about was how much in love she was with Pierre and how divine he was. She'd obviously had an enormous crush on him, because I didn't find him particularly good looking. He was very entertaining and likable, though, with a quick wit like his mother's, and had us all in stitches of laughter at his descriptions of his life working somewhere in a business on the Geneva lakeside. I never did find out exactly what he did there. Now he came up every weekend and seemed to have arranged some leave too, so he could spend as much time as possible with Brita. Almost every evening, Louis and me would call for Jaunty after supper, and the two couples would stroll hand in hand and engrossed in each other along the snow-covered road into the village to go skating. I trailed after them like a fifth wheel, all by myself, lonely and longing for a boyfriend of my own. I rather resented Louise Amy's adoration of Jonty, as I thought she took him for granted, treating him rather dismissively, and often turning down his nightly invitations to go out with him, saying she'd rather stay in and spend the evening with Brita. I would have gnawed off my right arm to have been invited out just once by this devastating, good-looking guy, and felt she didn't really deserve him. The village municipality had created an ice rink by the simple method of removing the posts holding up the tennis nets on the double courts and filling the area with water, which froze instantly in layers, forming a perfectly adequate surface for us to skate on. They draped multicolored fairy lights on strings through the netting around the court and piped pop music through loudspeakers attached to the corner poles. A local boy was employed as a DJ, and, for a tiny entrance fee, we could spend a perfect evening skating to music under the starlit sky. There was a small outlet in the main street that hired out skates at a weekly rate, and we tied these together by their long laces and slung them over our shoulders when we walked there and back. One night, while I was on my way home, I saw a particularly pretty diamond ring sparkling in the display window of the local jeweller's in the main street. I stopped and stepped closer to the window, leaning right forward to have a better look at the ring. My ice skate swung sharply over my shoulder, the steel blades of one hitting the glass with such a loud crack that it brought the others out of their reverie and running back to see what had happened. Are you trying a smash and grab?" teased Pierre. I was stunned with horror at what I'd done, and quickly peered closely to see if I'd broken the glass, this time holding my offending skates close to my body. I could see only a tiny chip where the blade had nicked the window, and after looking around to see if I'd set off any alarms or the police were on their way, I scuttled off home as fast as I could, undressing, jumping into bed, and turning off my bedside light to lie still, hardly daring to breathe, in case there was a knock at the door. But this was Switzerland, and not South Africa, and nothing happened. That is all for the time being, and there's more to come next week. I would like to thank John Moslane for putting aside his Friday afternoons to help me produce these videos. Without him, I could not do this. I would also like to thank Sean van Vuren for his sterling work in uploading my videos to my YouTube channel, adding the photos, as well as managing my channel so professionally. If you would like to know more about my other works, I have written 5 books in all, and each one is autobiographical. Please visit my website at www.whitezulubook.com, where you will find a lot more information as well as plenty of photographs. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed my life story, and there is plenty more to come. A thumbnail photo will be attached each week, and thank you so much for all your support and all the very kind remarks you make in complimenting me on my work. I really appreciate it. Goodbye.